This is Cosmo Royale telling you to get ready for Gazbot and the Big Dog Defender. Action activate!
Here we come! There they go! People rise! 'Cause they know we're super soldiers! We got cool clothes! You will soon! You see our pose! Hang shit! Energize! Let's go! Time to ride! Combine! Grease ties!
Hey, what's going on? Oh man, look, I started with both of us. That's not how I normally do it. Well, anyway, I'm Gazbot, and with me as always is...
Big Dog Defender, rocking the blue because he wasn't represented very much in this episode, so I figured we'll just do it here.
There you go. And this, of course, is Action Activate, and I live in a tornado zone because I moved recently and I have too many things to put away.
But also not in a tornado zone because he's in a place that doesn't have tornadoes. So
True, it'd be more
in
like
case anybody thought that was real.
No.
Yes.
My house looks like a tornado hit it, but it's much more. I should say it looks like an earthquake hit it because we have earthquakes here in California,
There you go.
or a heat wave, but then everything will be on fire, and that doesn't make sense. But none of that matters. We're here to talk about Power Rangers. We're here to talk about Dino Fury, episode 12, which is finally officially available. Oh yeah, for a minute I thought you were telling me we're on the wrong episode again. I'm like, oh no, not that again.
No, there's definitely nothing wrong with the episode that we watched in regards to we watched the same one, but you could definitely say there were some wrongs done in the episode, as it were.
Okay, well, I'm gonna put a little extra overlay and play this go as we chat, and then I'll cut in and out. This is the title, as it'll come up in a second, is Super Hotshot. I'm running with one monitor today, so I'm not going to be as smooth as I normally am. But Super Hotshot is the title. Now, do you want to give first impressions, or do you want to go through it as like how do you want to handle this one? Because we haven't done one in a little while.
We'll do first impressions. I haven't watched episode 11 in a while, but this was definitely a way of coming back to the series. And
this what any episode that would be true. This was definitely a way that yes, agreed. Go, can you hear your thought though?
Yeah, it's an episode of Power Rangers. Whether it feels like one from the modern era is yet to be seen. I definitely got nostalgia, but not in a good way, of seasons that I didn't finish or haven't watched completely, where I'm like, okay, cool beans.
Unfortunately, I do kind of agree that yeah, this is an episode of Power Rangers. It was well, spoilers towards the end. A big part of it is this gym training class, and at the end, Izzy takes over. But that definitely reminded me of like Jason and Tommy and all the classes that they were constantly running all the time.
Yeah.
The spoiler for the end is that I don't have anything particularly great or bad to say about this episode. It just sort of was an episode, and I guess that's better than coming back to a bad episode. But and again, this is also the thing of like, did they know this was going to be the episode they were coming back to? It's always a little unclear what the production crew knows and doesn't know, like in terms of airing. And of course, this is old news now, but aside from the fact that all these episodes were leaked a long time ago overseas and stuff, this just came to Netflix and they put up the whole rest of the season, even though it hasn't aired on Nickelodeon. So there's a lot of weird stuff, but it is officially available in America. So we are now reviewing it.
Yeah.
So why don't you start off? Why don't you start off?
So one thing that I tend to do is when we haven't seen an episode in a while, I usually watch the intro.
Yes.
Where, I mean, I didn't feel like super jazzed about it, but it was definitely, something that I'm not sick of yet in terms of the intro.
Agreed. Well, especially because, like you said, we haven't seen it in a while. It gets you going. And I like that it's at the beginning of the show instead of 10, 12 minutes in the middle. Like Beast
exactly.
Morphers.
Yeah. That versus Beast Morphers is a huge plus.
I will say, and this isn't, I guess, about this episode specifically, but a lot of people have said online, like, Dino Fury beats Beast Morphers. I'm not there yet.
Nope.
I like a lot of things about Dino Fury, but I still think Beast Morphers overall is done. And it's not a fair comparison because we're not done, but like, what have they seen that we haven't that has convinced them of that? You know what I mean? That's what I wonder.
I think if we I mean, we could do this, but I'm not going to do it anytime soon. If we looked back at like our first 12 episode reviews and like fast forward and kind of got the gist of like this one, didn't like this one, whatever, I could see those people being like, oh yeah, overall this is better consistently. Like maybe there's been 5 great episodes and 6 or 7 kind of mediocre versus season 1 of Beast Morphers where the highs were high, but the lows were low.
Tube of Trouble, right?
That I think was season 2.
Oh, that makes it even worse. Well, just to recap what was going on so far, Izzy is leading some exercises among the Rangers and talks about how she likes this coach and she's trying to convince her dad to pay for it, this famous coaching thing. And there definitely was some very this whole episode had a lot of borderline too goofy stuff. And it wasn't stuff that I love, but it wasn't so bad that I'm like, oh, this was a good example where he's like, I woke up and I found one of these flyers in my bed and one of these in my shoe and one in my sandwich. And I took a bite out of it thinking it was cheese. Not my favorite joke, but it was all right, whatever. And there's a lot of that in this episode where it's like a little bit cheeseball, but not so bad I was angry at it.
It just teetered the line just enough.
Yeah. And I guess that's fine because maybe the younger viewers do find it funny, but it doesn't completely enrage my sense of humor as an adult. Then they go to this legendary trainer.
Oh wait, sorry. Before the legendary trainer, for this scene, I agree with the humor with you. The only thing I didn't like was the interaction between Amelia and Ollie. I thought it was super not great.
I think that was still them trying to tease the relationship, but in a very preschool, I don't like you, kind of way, because they do like each other, I guess.
But she was like, oh, anybody need a piggyback ride? And he's like, oh, I do. I'm very tired. And all that, I thought, I agree with you. And then they did this back and forth about his watch, and I'm like, don't put peanut butter and jealous as a response there. That just, I hated that.
Well, I didn't love it, but that is consistent with a lot of the way they're writing the characters, where they all have kind of quips. Some land, some don't, but everybody has these little zingers lined up for whatever reason, which again, I like that more than when they put it all in 1 or 2 characters, but they don't always all land.
Yeah. That was one of those things. I'm like, oh, I didn't realize I was watching Troy just make some puns. Just got puns in here. Cause we've talked about it in previous episodes where they'll say humor and it's all ages humor, but it's so direct. Zato gets the best of it where he's just this was very bad and I am not a fan of it. And you're like, oh yeah, cool. I like that, as opposed to over trying and you're like, dial it back a bit.
I will say, and you might disagree with me, this in that same scene, she's trying to convince her father, the horrible park ranger guy, that she should be able to have money to train her. And she's like, come on, look at my puppy dog eyes. And then her brother's like, he's actually more of a cat person. She's like, meow. It was a stupid joke, but I liked that stupid
I actually did too. Yeah.
It made me laugh because I was just like, oh, okay, fine.
I also noticed whoever wrote this episode, parts of it were a lot more upbeat than normal. Cause the park ranger, I'm like, this is probably my favorite scene he's been in thus far. I'm like, I don't hate you.
You're right. I pointed that out because we've disliked him in previous episodes, but he didn't do anything that bothered me. He had good humor about the Flyers, and he's like, well, this is important to you, so okay, well, let's do it. And that was the end,
Yeah, as opposed to, I hate you. You're my least favorite child of the two of you, and your sister is a star athlete.
I pay for this, and I hate you, a gold medal winner, then I'm going to remove your name from my will. And
you're the worst. Get out. Get your guitar and leave.
We hate each other. I don't hate you. Well, I hate you double.
Anyway, speaking of hating, let's talk about the trainer, who I don't even know her name.
Before we go to the trainer, we get to the part of the episode that is consistently good, Slither.
Yes.
Now, I feel a little bit awkward about this because we've had Campbell Cooley on the show a few times. He's a friend of the show. We've had other people, Rangers, on the show too, though. So I don't want it to be like, well, I'm just saying I like Slither because I do like Campbell Cooley. But Slither really is one of my favorite, if not my favorite, of the characters he's ever done. He's just a lot of fun. And I mean, the performance is good and all that, but just for me, my funny bone, I'm the guy that likes Ninjor. And to me, he's the evil Ninjor. And I mean that in the best possible way.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I every time he's on screen and says his little one line, I love it. And starting with even just, this wasn't even his best joke, but they're setting up the thing where they're hijacking the hotline for the Rangers. And he's like, this is my most I'm not going to do the voice. He's like, this is my most devious plan. all day. And it's a throwaway thing, but it's like all day. So it just is like, he's been watching them all day, and this is the best one. So that was a good, okay, we're going to have some more jokes here.
Yeah, I like that it's he's a fair balance between the extremes that were Scrozzle of like I'm an evil mad science genius and Cosmo Royale of I'm the greatest showman in the galaxy.
Yeah.
It's like right in the middle where he's competent, but he's showy, but he doesn't overdo it.
Well, and that's the competent is a big part of it too, because as we've seen previously and in this episode, he can fight. He's not an idiot. You know, he's showy and kind of campy and over the top, but he's not a pushover. Like he could take on more than one Ranger at a time and be fine, you know? So like, I like that. It gives his bravado some gravitas.
There it goes. But yeah, I agree. He, you know, bias aside, he is definitely one of the, in the short amount of time, the most fleshed out villains that we've seen. And he doesn't feel stale, even though it seems like on paper he should be a one and done, but he's not.
Right.
Yeah.
But I would love it. This won't happen, but I would love it if by the end of this season, because things are getting crazy and who knows what's coming next season, if there is one, if they just start like pulling out all the stops and maybe there's some weird time travel thing where he's from the past or the future and he becomes Ninjor. Like, because he's a blue robot-y looking guy, and he knows a lot about all these magic and stuff. And like, what if through like kind of like with for Marvel fans, like with Kang and Immortus, and like how they're kind of this one of those things where like, oh, he becomes Ninjor, and at the end, Ninjor's like, I hated when I was that guy, or something. You know, like it won't happen, but I would love that if that happened.
Yeah, I definitely thought you were going a different direction with that wish. I thought you were going to be like, I wish through some weird thing we get him and Scrozzle in the same scene. I'm like, that seems plausible. Yours doesn't.
No, him and Scrozzle, that seems plausible. Well, we had Scrozzle and not Slither. Oh my gosh, the Dino Fury villain. Snide.
There we go.
Scrozzle and Snide in the same scene, so it's not unprecedented to have the same voice actor doing it. And yes, Scrozzle and Slither would be great, and it's plausible. Mine is less plausible, but who knows? I mean,
yours is never happening ever.
They had Venjix and Evox, you know, so nothing's impossible. Maybe it's something they could do in the comics. They could explore it in the comics. How about that?
You may have a great shirt, but that idea is I just noticed it. That's cool. But that idea is moving on. So,
okay. Well, so you wanted to talk about how much you like the coach.
So it's funny. So this is another classic Power Rangers thing where this is actually a point in Hasbro's direction. When we first see the coach, I'm like, man, like this coach is very over the top, and I feel like I initially don't like them, but I feel like that's not what's supposed to happen. And then as the episode kept going, I was like, whew, glad I got that judgment call right.
Well, it is weird because you're right, because she seemed very over the top, and I was immediately suspicious of her. But then they have the montage of them all working out, and Izzy's like, but that's the best workout I've ever had. And they're like, yeah. And so like it seemed like, okay, well, she's competent. Maybe she's just like a Sergeant Slaughter type where she's going too hard. But in that montage, there was a part where Zato was hitting the speed bag and he seemingly effortlessly busted open.
Yeah.
Which I don't know a lot about speed bags, but I know that a normal human doesn't bust
them
open.
It's very difficult
to
do.
No matter how hard you hit them. So I wasn't sure if this was supposed to be because he's an alien, he has a bit of super strength, because he's a ranger, he has a bit of super strength, or it was just a random joke. It landed weird where I'm like, what was that supposed to be?
I think 2 and 3, a combination of those is how I took it.
Okay. But I guess that's weird because if he's an alien, great. But if it's Ranger super strength, then the fact that earlier Blue, I forget his name, was like, oh, I'm wiped out from these minor calisthenics. Is like, well, doesn't he have Ranger strength too then? Like,
well, it to me, and I don't think they fleshed this out, but it's kind of like in Dino Thunder where they all had like special things where like Blue has Triceratops and he's very durable skin. It's like you don't have cardio, but like you're indestructible kind of thing.
All right. It wasn't horrible, but it was just a little unclear what they were going for there to me.
Yeah.
And then shortly after that, the coach says to Izzy, like, oh, by the way, you're the best student. You're a super hot shot. When she said that, that's when I knew, oh, she's terrible. Like,
see, I didn't fully get the terrible there. It's when they had to keep buying stuff. And I'm like, oh,
that was just further confirmation. The reason I knew she was terrible there was because I suspected she said that to everyone and was like fake. But let's say she meant it. That's still a bad thing. If you're a teacher, you don't go up and go, by the way, you're the best. That's just, you don't do that. Even if you think it in your head, that's just like, why would you? It's just bad. It's bad coaching. And I didn't believe she meant it, which of course later became clear she just, but you're right. The money thing really confirmed it.
And it's a thing. I know we're gonna like spoilery jump around for bits of the episode,
Yeah.
but like, for this, like the money thing, I'm like, oh well. By the end, at least she's gonna see the error of her ways, and like maybe it'll be a classic Power Rangers turnaround. No, this is just
Yeah.
a garbage person in Power Rangers. We just
Yes.
have a stone cold person we don't like
Garbage.
ever.
Yeah.
End of sentence.
Because even when Izzy was like confronting her later on, she wasn't like, oh, she was like, oh, okay, well, you still want to work with me, make a lot of money, right? Oh, you want his watch back, but still, let's make money. Like she was not getting it.
Yeah, at no point. And
Yeah.
that was the thing that I didn't get either. We'll talk more about it when it gets to that scene. But like so many things of like this character was 90% consistent, and then that other 10%, I'm like, I don't get why you're just doubling down on being bad. Like there's a line that like somebody just
even if
really doesn't like you.
Even if you think you're right and you think the other person agrees with you, once you realize they don't, you kind of scale it back. Or like, ha, I was just kidding, or whatever.
Yeah, it's just like, nope, I'm extra bad.
Speaking of like not inconsistent, but a thing I didn't love was, am I loud enough, by the way?
Yeah, you're fine for me.
I just realized my mic was a little far away. When the coach is manipulating the other rando to give his grandfather's watch, or the watch his grandfather gave him, and it's like, ooh, that seems a little weird. Izzy and Zeta were like, huh, that's a little weird. And the next scene, they have their suits. Like, boy, look at our great suits. And it's like, oh, I mean, okay, sure. But I felt like it warranted something, because it seems like it went from them being like, this is not right, to we love it, without anything in between. It just seemed a little odd.
One thing that didn't bother me too much was just a thing I kind of wondered was, in the initial part of this episode, Izzy's like, hey, Dad, like, I know this is expensive. Can you help me? And then Zeta goes, you know what? I'll join and be social. It's like, you're an alien who's like crazy old. Where do you have material money?
I thought about that too. And then, because then same thing with the uniform. He had the extra money for the uniform. And then later he had more. My thought was that maybe it's one of those like things where, oh, I had one gold bar from 1,000,000 years ago. And it just, or
like
the
I filled in
spaceship
the
can
blanks
give
there.
us money because, but not for everything, but for him because he's an alien. Like, I assume there's some off screen reasoning for it, but I did also think, what? And if he has that much money, why wouldn't he just treat her? Like I don't know if I'll have enough. He's like, well, I'm going to pay for myself, even though you're the professional.
Yeah, either he's independently wealthy because he has this timeless artifact he sold and he's set for life, or plot hole.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a plot hole. But we cut to Slither. We see the chaos of people running around, and like normally the Rangers would get a call, but they didn't because of what reasons. And Slither's in the garbage, and he gets the thing, and he fires at them. And he goes, "Whammo!" I don't know if he said that before, but it seemed like this episode is setting it up as his like attack catchphrase, and I'm here for it.
Yeah, to me, he is a walking, talking onomatopoeia of like anything he does, and I'm not against that because actually, I don't know if you read this back in the day, but Kevin Smith had a run on Green Arrow, and he invented a character called the Onomatopoeia where everything he did, like he said, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, no, I dig that. But of course, when he does that, he damages Izzy's expensive suit, even though they get hit all the time and their clothes are never damaged. Whatever, plot point, fine, Then they go into the main fight, and there's all the power-ups that don't matter, that are unearned, unexplained, that just show up. I was they started happening, and I've complained about this before and whatever. So I'm like, okay, whatever. I'm just going to accept this as part of the show. Except the balloon key. When they were listing their keys, and it's like flash key, hyper key, strength key. I'm like, all right, whatever. Some of these we've seen. And I'm like, did you just say balloon key? And it looked like a pink inflatable balloon, like you'd see someone make a poodle out of. And I'm like, is that? And I'm like, I was like, it can't literally be what it sounds like. And it was. And then he like puts a balloon around him. Now, aside from the fact that I think that's silly and makes no sense and it's not explained, forgetting all of that, these keys are not newly created. There isn't a Billy back at base going, oh, I'm going to make a balloon key. They're from millions of years ago when it was dinosaurs ruling. They didn't have balloons as far as we know. So it's just like, strength or muscle or power, all that stuff. Okay, these have been around since the beginning of time. But balloons are very specifically modern and human. So where did that come from? And why? Why is it why?
So my problem with this scene is different than yours.
So you're fine with the balloon key?
I did. Of all the things I chose to be bothered by in this scene, that was like number 3.
Well, I guess I already chose not to be bothered by a bunch of other stuff. And when I got to that, I'm like, nope, too much.
Yeah. See, for me, I was like, it's all ridiculous. I don't care at this point. So for me, it reminded me of Megaforce, where it's just like, you just get another another MacGuffin armor, and
Yes.
here's your MacGuffin 19 Zord
Absolutely.
and whatever.
But we've seen that before, so I was a little bit used to that.
But here's the thing.
Yeah.
What do all those other seasons have that this one doesn't have?
Guest stars?
A way of selling a toy or something of it.
Okay.
They're so like Power Rangers.
Well, this one had a guest star too, so that was not correct.
Power Rangers is a toy commercial, and when you put all this ridiculous stuff in, I give you the out of you're selling a plastic version of this to a child or
and there
an
isn't
adult.
like key sets people could buy, really.
There's nothing. There's literally this ridiculous balloon armor that you can't even say, well, it looks kind of cool when I put it on the Red Rangers arm. You get nothing. You get none of the benefits. You get all the downsides. And you have this goofy stuff that makes no sense at all.
Right. So even if there's kids that think it's awesome, they can't collect armor sets.
You can't even get a key of it. You can't get the plastic little metallic key of it. You can't get an armor add-on.
Yeah, the only keys you can get that are ones that happen to come with a figure or a vehicle. They don't even have like, there should be some kind of bonus power-up sets.
There's nothing. There's stone cold zero.
Yeah. And before people say all the shelves are empty because of things going on in the world and all that, that's true, but that's not what he's saying. He's saying they aren't created. They don't exist.
These don't exist.
Yes. Yeah. And that's true. That is a very good point. And I think that's a better point to be upset about than my point. But viscerally, I still was like, that balloon thing is stupid and it shouldn't be there.
It should have been called something else. Because my take was this was Sentai footage that they used, which is fine.
Sure. But in Sentai, I'm assuming they had a different story or well, maybe not. Maybe Sentai was just as like random. But if it was modern stuff and it's randomly a balloon, it's okay. But if we're
helium armor,
what?
Helium armor, call it maybe instead of balloon.
But it looked like a balloon. Again, well, the thing I'm hung up on isn't that I think it's a little bit dumb, because there's lots of stuff that's a little bit dumb, but it doesn't fit the timeline they established of when these were created. It's I know it's a little thing, but it's a thing. Like I let all this other stuff slide. I'm like, not that bothers me. So that was my least favorite thing in the whole episode, actually, believe it or not. And there's other things to dislike, but that was the one that got me the most. Like,
interesting. Fight was okay.
Yeah,
like that's a theme of this episode. Anything that we quote unquote liked was fine.
Yeah, it was fine. Slither had a couple more jokes that made it better. They realized at that point that there was no hotline call, so they realized something maybe is going on. Back to the gym. This might be what you're talking about with the coach being inconsistent. Is this what you're talking about here?
Yeah, where the coach initially, like you said, it seems like, part of the draw for Izzy and everybody else was like the coach did a really good job. Mm-hmm. Maybe they know the introductory class incredibly well to sell people, and then after that have stone cold nothing, because that's what I took for this of, hey, Izzy, why don't you run stuff since you're calling my bluff on not knowing what I'm doing?
That's a good explanation, but I don't think that's what because it seemed like originally they are actually a good coach, but they care more about money than the people they're training. That's a perfectly fine character, and that makes sense. But it seemed like I don't know much about working out. You know more than I do, but but even I know stretching is important, and the harder you're going to work, the more you should stretch beforehand and after and stuff. So even if I only knew an introductory, if I had to train someone, all I would know is let's stretch first. It's the only thing I would really know, So the fact that she didn't know to tell people to stretch seems wildly inconsistent. The fact that maybe, she's not as good of a coach as she pretends to be, and she has it, but she was. Izzy, who knows what she's doing, was impressed. So I think it was enough to make her a money-hungry person that doesn't care about people that lies to get money and still be a competent coach. But it's like they wanted to be like, oh, well, she's a bad guy, so she can't be good at coaching. And that's not true. You can be good at coaching and be a terrible person. So I just felt like somebody somewhere was like, well, no, she can't be a competent trainer because she's evil. And I don't know, that bothered me.
Yeah, I think they should have leaned into it either way, whether your side being right or my side being right. There was that teeter-totter of she's good, but she's not, doesn't know what she's doing, but she kind of does, but she doesn't. But
better is if she was pushing somebody too hard and having them do 10 more crunches and they pull a muscle or get hurt some way.
Exactly.
She's just I got to be really hard on them. And because then it's okay, she does know what she's doing, but she doesn't care enough to protect her people. You get the same message.
Yeah. If you burn out, fine, I'll have somebody replace you and train them up kind of deal.
Yeah.
But again, it's the inconsistency. right here, we get the montage of a little bit of working out again, but it's more Zato kind of shadowing her and noticing she's telling everybody they're the best.
Yes.
So then he's waiting for the opportune time to bring it up, which I appreciate for Zato's character development in this, where like he's not like that, hey, I'm gonna ruin your party right now. Like he tries to be like caring of other people's feelings, and like I'm gonna try to do this as gently as I can without just like, hey, you need the truth, good, bad, or in between.
And he also gathers evidence. He doesn't just, because he clearly had a bad feeling from before that, but he's like, okay, I know for sure, and I'm gonna wait. Yeah, I agree. Zato comes off looking really good here. But we cut back to Buzz Blast, which literally, because I hadn't watched the show in so long, I'm like, oh yeah, Buzz Blast is a thing. But yeah, Jane's a character. I forgot. As Jane and Jayborg sketches go, this wasn't that bad.
This was one of the better ones, to be honest.
It was one of the better ones. Weirdly, what I liked the least was, what was they called? Cyber Coach.
Yeah.
Looked like a brick. It looked like a bunch of wood painted with primary colors, which would be fine. In our world, that is what the robot might look like, because it would basically be an iPhone hooked up to some pneumatic tubes and stuff. But in that scene, they have Jayborg, who looks and acts like a human.
And so can't like, count, apparently.
Yeah, okay, that doesn't bother me. Fine, whatever. She's clearly like glitchy and whatever. But you can't put a brick of a robot next to a cyborg-looking human. Like what? Why? How are we supposed to be impressed by that? I literally thought it was going to be Jayborg or someone that looked equivalent to Jayborg. Like, I am the new coach, and malfunction and whatever, of course. But it was just a weird. Even if and I'm thinking like, oh, maybe it was budget, but no. All they need to do is take anyone. They could take me and put a little silver dot right here. I'm the robot. They built a whole big
and literally give you like a track jacket or something.
Yeah, So that was weird. But as far as the actual humor, it was, okay, the sweat and the water and they shoot too many things. And I was like, all right, I've seen worse. It didn't make me laugh, but yeah, actually one part did make me laugh, but not for the reasons they wanted. She says sweat, and it's like, here's the towel. And then she says, I'm thirsty. And she opened her mouth, and I thought it was going to be like a seltzer bottle spraying in the face. And I was expecting that, and that's what we got a minute later. But it was like, and this little CGI pellet of water, right? It looked like somebody drinking when in outer space, where it just hovers there. And so I did laugh out loud at that because it was so ridiculous. What? But I don't think that's why they wanted me to laugh. But I did laugh there, to be fair.
So when this scene started, outside of the Jane Jayborg joke, I thought what was going to happen was like Izzy was going to complain about this coach, and then Amelia was going to come over and be like, oh yeah, I'm doing a story on this like swindler that is like chronically stealing people's money going from town to town, and like that's how they were going to reveal the coach was bad.
That would be amazing.
I know, and I was a little disappointed that wasn't what it was.
That would be a good way to actually tie things together, as opposed to, because they this is what they do a lot in Power Rangers, well, in modern Power Rangers.
Yeah.
I'll even, I'm being too broad of a brush. I'm going to say in this season. This is what they do a lot in this season, is that they want to tie the comedy B plot and Buzz Blast stuff in with what's going on with the Rangers. And there's nothing wrong with that, and that's something they've done forever. The difference is, comparing it to like Bulk and Skull type stuff, what would typically happen in like Mighty Morphin is the Rangers would be fighting some enemy that has like, they're a chef, and then whatever. And while that's happening, Bulk and Skull will be like, we're going to enter the pie baking contest, and we're going to win a first prize. And they have their antics, but the chef character is like, I'm the best chef, so I'm going to go to the pie eating contest. So it kind of ties together. And it, with this, it's like, okay, the Rangers are dealing with a coach. So Buzz Blast is going to randomly do an article about coaching. And it's like, but they're not connected at all. And like what you're suggesting would make sense, where if they're investigating coaching, and they can still have the joke about the cyber coach. It's like, well, we've uncovered that some coaches are not, reliable and they're corrupt, but who wouldn't be corrupt? A robot. And so we've invented, so they can still have the same joke.
Just anything. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, they don't do a good job of tying the A and B plots together other than thematically. And it's often like, that's a big coincidence, and it is, but why not connect it? Why not connect it? You know what I mean? Like there's a way to do it. But whatever. Yeah.
After this, we go back to the tower, I believe, the cell tower.
They're talking about the coach. They're all hanging out together. They're talking about, and Zato is kind of suspicious, and he's saying how she said a lot of people were the best person, and Izzy's like, well, that's just a motivating tactic or whatever. And he's like, maybe she's just trying to get you. This is I think a mistaken line. He says maybe they're just trying. Why would she do that? Why would you lie? Maybe they're just trying to get you to buy that expensive membership. But he says this after they bought the expensive membership and were there for class 2 or 3. So I'm like,
Yeah,
wait, they already did. I also like that even after that, like you said, he's like, okay, well, I still want to support my friend. She needs a new uniform or whatever. And they all kick in some money. But they did a shot and it was a bunch of singles. And so it looks like everybody kicked in and she had like $8. I'm like, well, if those suits are only $8, that's not that unreasonable, actually. Like,
or you can get your watch that was a gift from your grandparent.
yeah, or that. Yes. Well, and
that also was one of those things I'm like, Power Rangers or not, if anybody's saying, hey, give me your material good for this thing, instant scam.
Yes. I realized I haven't been showing any images, partially because I only have my one monitor setup, and partially because, and I will go into this in a different episode, we've gotten a lot of copyright strikes lately.
Have we?
Yes. I've been doing my best to not, have it be something that we have to worry about, but well, I don't want to go into it here, but that's why partially I don't have my proper setup and partially I'm nervous. So that's, but here he is giving away the watch that we were just discussing. Yeah, anytime that happens, it's sus. You're right, but
it's bad. Yeah,
but we yes, suspect. Sorry, among us lingo here. But before, but this after all that happens, she goes and she has her new suit and she's like, hey, I got my new suit, and that's when the coach does everything we said before. She's like, it's all about the money, blah, blah, and we don't need to rehash that. And I do like
first she brings up that she patched it up and she's like, oh, your suit's damaged, buy a new one. She's like, it was kind of expensive. She's like, well, if you don't want to be traded by the best, you could just have a raggy suit with a hole in it. But make your own choice and give me more money.
She did that a lot. Like, you could do whatever you want. You could be garbage or you could do what I said.
Yeah, you could be like one of these losers, or you could give me more money for a suit.
Right. And then she tries to lure her in to be like, hey, come work with me. You're actually good enough to train and we can make money together. And just, that guy was a chump. I took his watch.
And everybody's the worst. And everybody's the worst. Reveal how terrible I am to you. And while you're making a face of disgust.
Yeah, repeatedly too. Again, even after she's like, let me buy the watch back. She's like, I didn't want it anyway. She's like, so you want to work with me? It's like, still, you think this is like,
but first, let me take your money. Yes.
So then we're introduced. Green and Black show up because their dad calls and said, are you in this park? And they're like, no. And he's like, good, because there's a Sporks, get out of here, but they're the Rangers, so they go. And we see, I thought his name was Bogshell, but it's Fogshell. And we see him and he's talking to Mucus and Slither, and he's already like teamed up with them. Now, Green and Black see this and they say, okay, there is a Sporks here and there's something probably wrong with our system because we didn't get a call and whatever. Don't worry, we got this. I have issues with that because previously we had seen Slither fight 2 or more Rangers to at least a draw.
Yeah.
Here's Slither, Mucus, and a new Sporix, and the 2 of them are like, yeah, we got this. Now, I understand they're saying somebody should investigate the Ranger phone line. That's not as important. Yeah, that's not as important as this fight. And maybe one person could stay at base and send the other 2. And really, what's her name? The dinosaur. I forget her name off the top of my head, but she can investigate it. That's exactly like that. So it was just, and I understand it probably lines up with Sentai footage, but it was just such a weird, like, hey, remember that guy that all 5 of us have fought to a standstill? He's got 2 people with him. So just us are going to handle it. You look into that phone call thing, other 3, 4 of you. Like, it's just like,
I'm really mad that my coach made me angry, so I'm just going to unleash this green rage on the 3 of them.
Yeah.
They also made a note that, like, I didn't fully understand. Of like, oh, they got to the Sporix and they've already teamed up. It's like, were you gonna try to team up with the
I don't think that was the case. I think sometimes they get Sporks and it hasn't hatched yet. That's the best case scenario. Sometimes the Sporks comes out and they're not going to team up with the Power Rangers probably, but sometimes they're like a free agent or whatever. But this was clearly they'd already recruited them, so they're already this far along in the process that they have a new soldier, and so which further explains that you will definitely have to fight that person. Except they didn't, because then Slither's like, you 2 get out of here. I'll take. Which fair enough, Slither's strong enough, but why would you dismiss? You recruited this person to be a new soldier and then are immediately like, get out of here.
I think it was a thing where, and this played into the next part that we're going to go over, where he wanted to distract those Rangers. Mm-hmm. He figured the other 3 Rangers still didn't know what was going on, since obviously all of them weren't there, and they were going to still just go on their Sporix search and try to like maximize the tapped phone line.
Okay. All right. That's a good explanation. I'll go with that. Cause you're right. They did. I'll give you Ninja Steel because they did go back to the phone. But then, of course, Red, Pink, and Blue realize what's going on and they triangulate and they show up, and
No,
then
they call it first.
Right. Oh yeah, right. And then there's Muka's like, oh, the Red Ranger.
Yeah, and then they're like, oh, go to the steps over here, and there's definitely a Sporex there, and then they instantly teleport, and they're like, haha, gotcha.
Yeah. But then meanwhile, Slither Magic runs away from the fight. Not that he was necessarily losing, but he's just like, I'm done here. And he said, and then one of them, I think Black was like, that dude's a lot. Javi's like, that dude's a lot, which I kind of like because he is, but like people are extra. I'm like, I like extra people.
Sorry, go for it.
Slither makes a joke, which wasn't one of his best jokes. He's like, you like magic? And he's like, boom, boom. Now you see me, now you don't. And he disappears, right? Fine, but not top tier of things he said. I was like, okay, whatever. The next scene, actually, I think it comes back 2 scenes later or whatever. We cut to him at the phone, and it's just like in the middle of a sentence talking to me because he's like, and then I said, now you see me, now you don't. And I'm like, that's amazing. He's bragging about the joke he made. That it took a very mediocre Slither joke and made it amazing.
I didn't even fully notice that, to be honest.
That I did, because I'm like, wait, what is he? Yeah, he was just bragging about the joke he made. That's amazing.
That's awesome. One thing they did a lot in this episode, and they're going to do it in the next fight, they turned their swords into daggers and then threw them, which is interesting, but I'm like, okay.
I guess because they don't have guns?
Okay.
Yeah.
But then you're insinuating they're a boomerang. Because, I can't tell if they have boomerang type capabilities because, spoiler alert, every time they threw them, Slither blocked them all.
Yeah.
So, I'm not sure if they
episodes, but I don't remember how they got them back. Someone in the comments could probably.
Yeah, just something interesting I noticed.
Yeah. During this time, they're fighting Fogshell, the other 3, and he's using his fog. And literally at that moment, I was like, "Oh, Fogshell."
Yeah, I got that right away.
Yeah. But I thought it was Bogshell. I misheard it originally.
Sentai footage, because there's thick fog. It definitely looks lower grade quality than the cameras we're used to, and they almost get into a fight with each other in the fog, which I'm sure was a much bigger plot point in the Sentai.
Maybe.
To me, it seemed like the way that fog was set up, they fought this villain multiple times, and that was a big thing of oh, I almost ran into you, and then they get bombarded by them in the fog. Whereas this, it was kind of a throwaway 10 seconds where I'm like, you guys Frankenstein this episode hard.
Maybe you're right. It did seem, but I guess I've seen that a lot where they're like, here's the big thing. Oh, never mind. So I guess I'm just used to that.
Well, because we didn't even get a Zord fight, which I just realized.
Yeah, I did realize that because I was looking at the time and I'm like, okay, but so they're going to use Bogshell again, clearly, because he didn't get destroyed or whatever. But they regroup. There's all 5 of them. They use the daggers again, and Slither is like, oh, haha, casual. But then the 5th one, I guess they planned it so that the way he hits the phone. Didn't quite make sense. I understood what they're going for, but
deflected again, deflected a 3rd time.
The 5th deflect was a defect, so that's all I know. Woo!
Ooh, zing.
And then, so then we cut. No Zord fight. Nobody gets big. And then they're talking about they put a new firewall on the Ranger hotline so it can't be hacked again, which, okay, fine, whatever.
Science, whatever.
That just lets us know that we're not going to do this plot point again. Yeah. And then Izzy returns the watch to the guy who had traded in, and the coach is there.
But wait, here is our big final bad guy fight of the episode.
That would have been amazing if the coach was like,
no, this, instead of an actual fight, we're doing a PSA at the end of don't be a scumbag and
true,
be nice.
Which is kind of anticlimactic. It should have been more 2/3 of the way into the episode or something. But what I did like was the coach, when she's calling the coach out, the coach's like, don't listen to her. She doesn't know what she's talking about. And I thought to myself, I'm like, you put her in charge of your class earlier. And the other guy's like, you put her in charge of your class earlier. So I was like, oh, there we go. That's the consistency we're looking for. And then everyone's like, yeah, and then Izzy's like, I'll train you all for free, which is nice, but also you can charge them a few bucks. I mean,
it's your time is valuable.
It's not immoral to charge money for a service. Just do it the proper way. But whatever. That goes back to the whole MMPR, where anybody that wants to learn anything, everyone's willing to teach them. I'll spend hours with you, kid, even though I'm somehow
because they would do it. I think at the U Center, which was their version of the Y, where it's community based.
Maybe they were being paid to be there. It's unclear, but and that was the end of the episode. I give this episode the most solid, perfect, shining C I've ever given. It's satisfactory. Nothing in it I hated. Well, the thing I hated in it wasn't even that bad compared to other episodes, and the jokes I liked from Slyther weren't the best. It was like everything was sort of like, oh, this is fine, this is fine, this is fine. Oh, it's over. Okay, nothing really happened. This episode could not exist and wouldn't change anything continuity wise. It's very inoffensive, very forgettable.
Yeah,
that's what I have to say about this episode.
The most memorable thing for me is, as PSA Power Ranger episodes go, this one literally is, don't be a greedy dirtbag.
Like, it's a good message, I guess.
None of the Rangers get into fights with each other where like they have a big change of heart. It's, hey, this person is a scumbag, and that's it.
Yeah, and Zato handles it well, and their friends.
Yeah, and the friends get together and they watch out for other people.
It definitely was. It was heavily loaded. Where like usually the PSA is like 25%, 50% of the episode. This was like 75%. It's like 75%.
It was like all PSA, a little Sporix.
Yeah. So again, I see. Well, what do you give it?
Same. Like if I nitpick it, I could give it a C-. But like,
yeah, but I give it a C because exactly what I said. It's forgettable and inoffensive. It wasn't terrible. It wasn't good. It's a Power Rangers episode. It's just, it's just so right down the middle in all ways that I'm like, yeah, that's kind of what a C is, I guess.
There were no highs, and there were
assignment. You have completed it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There were no highs, and the lows weren't as low as like other episodes. The J-Borg and Jane joke wasn't that bad. Like, there's no inconsistencies with the Rangers that I feel are complaint worthy. Like, we got a human character that doesn't happen to be a monster, and it's just pure
I just started
evil.
skipping around the timeline, and everything is like the coach or Izzy. Like okay, here's actual battle. But I just was randomly skipping around the timeline, and most of it was the coach looking angry.
Yeah.
Until like the last 5 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I hope episode 13's good. I think that's the one that got all the buzz initially.
I know both you and I. Well, here's the thing. It's funny because both you and I got a pretty big spoiler, and I don't want to say what it is in case there are people who haven't. But I feel like most people that watch this not only get the spoilers but seek them out and/or have watched all of these episodes 3 months ago. But
fair.
This is the format we do, and if there are people that follow the way we do, we're not going to spoil it intentionally for you.
Yeah.
But yeah, that being said, we'll be back next week with episode 12 or 13 review. And until then, this was kind of a mediocre one to come back on. But I have been Gazbot.
Still Big Dog. Defender. To the power. See you guys later.
End credits. Nope.
Derp, 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 derp. Man, look at that neighborhood in Hayward.
I know. We used to talk about how that was like haircuts or clothing or whatever we wore, but now I don't even live there anymore.
Yeah. I still have that shirt, and I think I have that hat, or I lost that hat
I have that vest somewhere.
I may have lost that hat at a theme park. I gotta double check.
Well, that's a good place to lose it. Anyway, I'm going to end the broadcast. We'll see you guys next week.